My name is Sombet. I'm 80 years old, and I want to begin with something that the title of this message contains, but that I want to say differently than the title implies. I am not going to tell you that certain things are meaningless in some universal and objective sense. I am not in a position to know what is or is not meaningful to you. What I can tell you, with the authority of someone who has lived long enough to look back clearly at the full shape of a life, is this. There are things I spent significant portions of my life on that when I look at them now with honest eyes, produced almost nothing that I genuinely value. Not because they were evil or wrong, because they were substitutes. They occupied the space where something more genuine could have grown, and the cost of that substitution, measured in the years and the attention and the energy that went into things that did not matter much, is something I would rather not have you discover the same way I discovered it. In your last years, looking back, wondering what was actually going on in all that time. If you are somewhere in or approaching what the culture calls your later years, stay with me, not because I have a formula for how to live them, but because I have something more specific than that. I have an honest account of what I watched myself and others pour time into, that, in the end, left almost nothing behind. And I believe that naming those things clearly is one of the most useful things one person can offer another. I was born in northern Thailand and entered the monastery as a young man. I have lived a long life, and the particular vantage point of this age is not primarily about wisdom. It is primarily about perspective. From here, the shape of a life becomes visible in ways that the middle of the living of it does not permit. You can see, looking back, where the energy went. You can see what those investments produced, and you can see with a clarity that is both gift and grief, the difference between the things that left something real and the things that left almost nothing. The first thing I watched people, including myself, waste significant years on is the management of other people's opinions of them. Not their actual behavior toward others, not the genuine work of being someone whose presence in the world is good for the people they encounter. The management of the impression, the ongoing, energy-consuming project of making sure the image held by others matches the image hoped for. I spent more years than I would like to admit in a subtle version of this. Even in spiritual life, where it dressed itself in the language of humility and service, there was often underneath it an intense attention to how I was being received, to whether I was being seen as the kind of monk, the kind of person, the kind of practitioner I wanted to be seen as. That management cost enormous energy. It produced nothing durable, and it consistently prevented the more genuine engagement with my actual life that would have produced something worth having. The second thing is the rehearsal of grievances. This is one of the most reliable wasters of late-life energy I have observed. The replaying over and over of moments when you were wronged or diminished or overlooked or treated in ways that were genuinely unfair. The conversations that happen only in your own head, where you finally say what you should have said, where the other person finally understands, where the injustice finally gets the acknowledgement it deserved. Those conversations are some of the most expensive things a human being can engage in. They cost attention and energy and time, and the specific quality of presence that being genuinely engaged with the life actually in front of you requires. And they produce nothing. The person you are replaying it with is not changed by the rehearsal. Only you are changed, and the change is not for the better. The third thing is the postponement of genuine connection in favor of comfortable isolation. I am not talking about introversion or the genuine need for solitude. I am talking about the specific pattern of letting relationships that could have been genuine stay shallow or distant or non-existent, because the effort of genuine connection felt like too much, because it required vulnerability that was uncomfortable, because it required showing up in ways that might expose something you preferred not to expose. Late in life, the cost of that postponement becomes very visible. Not as regret about the relationships you did not have necessarily, but as a kind of emptiness that comfortable isolation cannot fill, and that no amount of later connection can entirely retroactively address. And here's what I didn't understand then. Genuine connection does not require extraordinary courage or extraordinary openness. It requires something much more available than that. It requires a willingness to be actually present with another person in the ordinary, imperfect, unspectacular way that actual presence looks. That willingness, withheld across many years of comfortable avoidance, is one of the most quietly costly things I have observed in people looking back at lives that felt somehow insufficient despite being comfortable. The fourth thing is the endless optimization of circumstances in hope of achieving a state that the circumstances cannot deliver. I watched many people, and I did this myself for years, spend enormous energy trying to arrange the external conditions of life in ways that would finally produce the inner peace, or the sense of sufficiency, or the feeling of having arrived that they were looking for. The right home, the right work arrangement, the right level of financial security, the right spiritual community, the right version of the daily schedule. All of these are real and worth attention. But there is a version of attending to them that is actually running from the recognition that what you are looking for is not located in any of those places. And that running, dressed as self-improvement or life optimization, can consume many years of genuine living. You know what surprised me most? Every time I managed to produce the external condition I had been convinced would finally deliver the inner peace was either briefly there and then not there, or not there at all. Not because the conditions were wrong, because the thing I was looking for was not in the conditions. And the years spent optimizing the conditions were years not spent finding what was actually looking for me in the quieter, less dramatic engagement with my actual inner life. The fifth thing is the substitution of expertise about living for the actual living of the life. This one is particular to a certain kind of person. People who read a great deal about how to live well, who study spiritual teachings with genuine dedication, who understand, often with considerable sophistication, the principles that are supposed to produce a good life, and who, despite that understanding, do not live those principles in the daily, ordinary, unglamorous texture of their actual days. I did this for years. I understood things about non-attachment while being intensely attached. I understood things about presence while being frequently absent from my own life. I understood things about acceptance while consistently fighting what was. The understanding was genuine, but it was living at the level of the map and not at the level of the territory. And the distance between those two things, across many years, produced a specific kind of sophisticated incompleteness that took a long time to recognize and longer to begin addressing. The sixth thing is the deferral of honest expression in favor of safety. This is different from the management of others' opinions, though it is related. This is specifically the pattern of not saying what is true, not making what is real visible, not bringing what is genuinely inside into the world in any form, because the exposure feels too risky, too vulnerable, too uncertain in its reception. Late in life, the cost of that deferral is often felt as a kind of unliveness, a sense that something that could have been said, created, expressed, or offered never made it out of the internal space into the shared world. That something is not lost in any permanent sense, but the years it was held back are not recoverable. The seventh thing, and the one that I think is most important to name clearly, is the treatment of ordinary days as the time before real life begins. This is perhaps the most quietly devastating habit of all, because it does not feel like waste while it is happening. It feels like patience, like waiting for the right conditions, like the reasonable recognition that now is not quite the time, and that later, when circumstances are better, or when you are more ready, or when some necessary thing has been resolved, then the genuine living will begin. And later arrives as old age, and the ordinary days that were treated as the waiting room turn out to have been the life. Not the preparation for it, the life itself, in all its unremarkable, imperfect, completely sufficient ordinariness. What most people don't realize until it is quite late is that the ordinary day you are living right now, with its frustrations and its incompleteness and its unresolved questions, is not a lesser version of the life you are waiting to live. It is the life. And engaging with it as if it were not, as if the real engagement is always coming later, is the most fundamental of all the ways a human life can be wasted, without ever doing anything obviously wrong. At 80 years old, I do not tell you these things as someone who has fully escaped them. I tell you them as someone who has recognized them, imperfectly and gradually, and who has experienced the specific quality of different engagement that comes from recognizing them even late. The management of others' impressions loosened. The rehearsal of grievances, still present sometimes, but caught faster and released more quickly. The deferral of connection addressed in small and specific ways. The optimization of circumstances replaced slowly by the honest engagement with what is actually here. The substitution of expertise for living, recognized and being gradually corrected. The safe silence, occasionally broken. And the ordinary day increasingly met as the life it has always been. It is not too late. Whatever years you have, they are real years. They contain genuine days. And genuine days, met honestly as the life they are, rather than the waiting room they can be treated as, produce something. Not dramatically, quietly, in the specific, real way that honest engagement with actual life always produces something worth having. Tell me in the comments which of these 7 things you recognize most clearly in your own experience right now. Not the one that sounds most impressive to acknowledge, the one that is most honestly present. And if this message gave you something real to return to, stay close to this space. Because the alternative to wasting the remaining years is not a dramatic reimagining of the life. It is the daily, honest, undramatic choice to be genuinely present to the life that is actually here, one ordinary day at a time.